We are at the time of the year when people have a lot of food out of the plot, the garden, the allotment, and it's sometimes a wonder to what to do with it. But then later on in the year, between sort of February and the end of March, beginning of April, we have what we call the hungry gap. And the hungry gap is that time when you've got things growing, but you've not got anything harvestable. You've got things coming on, but there's just not enough left from last year of the produce we've had this autumn to see you through. So the hungry gap is an important time for all gardeners, particularly those people who are into self-sufficiency. Now we're going to try and make our food last for as long as we can, and the first way of doing that has got nothing to do with storage whatsoever. It's down to how we make the harvest period extended. And there's a number of ways of doing that. The first way, obviously, is successional sowings. You can sow, for example, carrots from April all the way through till the end of August, and even beyond. Particularly if you've got somewhere indoors or you've got a cloche to cover them with. The average temperature in October is around about 7 to 10 degrees, and if you're in a cloche, that can be 14 to 15 degrees very easily, and therefore you can be sowing seeds. But generally speaking, if you're sowing successionally every couple of weeks from April right the way through to the end of August, there aren't going to be that many months when you haven't got carrots available to you. That goes for things like carrots, turnips, and also your salads. And you can have salads in December and January very, very easily, just by keeping them warm, keeping the wind and the rain off them, and successionally sowing. Now once you've got your food ready for storage, the first thing that you need to do is to cure it. Especially important for foods like potatoes and carrots and swedes and turnips, all of those. And curing them doesn't mean like we do with bacon, with salt. Curing means leaving them out into the atmosphere so that the skin can harden up. And I've got some that I've kind of cured here. First thing you do when you pick, take your leaves off so that it's not going to evaporate water out of your carrot. These are Autumn King, I think, and they've been left out in the dry. If it's going to rain, bring them inside, so that the skin hardens up a little. Potatoes, that happens in about 3 days. This happens after about a week, and you've then got a situation where your carrots or your produce is ready for storage. Only ever store your best produce. Don't be tempted to store the rubbishy bits and eat the best. Of course you want to eat some of the best, but the very best, store those, because they are much more liable to do well in storage. The other thing about growing plants specifically for storage, a few weeks before you pick them, then make sure that they are well watered and well nourished, so that they put on maybe even a little bit of spur of growth. You get an extra bit of sweetness, and then examine them. Make sure that there are no blemishes, there are no infestations, there's no rot, that you can store. Now storage, there are lots of ways of storing carrots and turnips and many, many other root vegetables. The simplest way is literally in a net, on a shelf, in the air. Doesn't need to be freezing, needs to be frost free actually, but generally a nice dry even place, a place where there are no vermin or rats and mice to come and gobble up all of your stored food. But for many root crops the best place is actually in the ground, and we're going to have a look at two ways of doing this. The first way of doing it is in these boxes. Now we spend our winter time making boxes, and they're really useful. You can use them as planters, you can use them as storage, you can use them more or less as anything. and you put in the bottom a layer of dry sand about 1 inch deep, and then on the dry sand you then pack, alternately, because your carrots are conical, you pack your carrots with maybe half a centimetre gap between them, and then you pack the end as well. And then once you've got your carrots in there, they're not actually touching, cover them with more dry sand so that all of the gaps are filled in, and then you have a really nice bed for these carrots to sleep in. And in this way, these carrots will last 3 to 4 months without any real hassle. Why do we put them in sand rather than just leaving them in the open air? Well, first of all, it does protect them from rats and mice. Secondly, the sand has a microclimate just around it, so that the little grains of sand covering the carrots, they will then make their own little atmosphere. They'll be just moist enough. They'll keep much better. Now I'm running out of carrots here, but you get the idea. So you pile up your carrots until the box is full, and you end up with a box that is stackable, that breathes nicely, and is full of carrots. Label it so that you know what's in there when it comes to taking them up. And I tend to stick about a week's worth of food inside one of these boxes, so that I know that I might have 10 to 12 of these full of various different kinds of vegetable. The only other thing I've found is that if you keep it in a shed, particularly if you have neighbours with cats, then they often come along and use it as a litter tray. Now, the other way of preserving food like this is to use a clamp. A good old-fashioned clamp actually is a huge thing. We translate it from the field scale into the garden scale and still use it, and it's still a very good way of doing it. What you have to do is to dig a hole about 2 foot deep, and in the bottom of that hole you've put a good 5 to 6 inches of straw. Having laid the straw, you then put your produce on top and then cover that with more straw. Pile more produce, more straw. Pile more produce, more straw. And then the final bit of straw is maybe about 8 inches of straw. Having done that, all of the soil that you dug out of the hole covers the clamp up, so that you then have a really good, warm, secure place for the produce that's in there. How does it work? What does it do? Well, first of all, the straw deters all of the slugs and snails that might otherwise get to your crop. The second thing is you've got this climate thing going on again inside, where this air and moisture come from the food, but it stays dry because the rain percolates around the straw. And the third thing is that it doesn't actually get either too frozen or too wet or too warm, and food in a clamp will last you probably 3 to 4 months. When you need your food, you dig a bit out and then pack more straw around where you've dug and fill it in again with soil. So, storing, choose your best stuff, cure it, pack it somewhere dry and warm and frost free. Use a clamp because it's great fun and it actually really does work.